Arsenal could be seeing up to 2 players leave in the coming weeks, whilst a brand new defender has been linked to the club. This is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another episode of what is, of course, as always, at 8 a.m. every single day, a brand new show for you today. We're talking about Arsenal transfers. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in and joining me. It is very much appreciated. If you could drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box today. Graham, Damien, Martin, Pam, Derek, and Martin, and Josh. We've got Paul and Graham and other Paul as well. More Pauls, loads of Pauls this morning. Jimbo, Babatunde. We've got Rich. We've got Josh, Mr. Ree, Lars. We've got Carl and Amira, Maximius, Angela, Joe. Josh, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It is very much appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far and that it is treating you well and yours, of course, as too. But we're going to jump into today's stories very shortly. If you haven't already gone and checked out yesterday's show, oh no. Did I manage to catch that? I don't know if I clicked the mute button in time. That was the worst sneeze that I've ever done, I think. And somehow it's managed to come out as I clicked the mute button. I don't know. Maybe you got half of it. But I tried to save you guys from it. There may be another one along soon, like London buses. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that if you haven't already, I hope that you've already checked out yesterday's show I did with Harry Symeou. It was a quiet January. A quiet January is what is expected. Me and Harry sat down on the Canton Symeou show to have a quick check and check in about what's been going on in our worlds whilst we have this quiet January. We talked about Mikel Arteta quite a lot. We talked about the dynamic of what it's like reporting on the club at times. And we talked obviously about transfers too. And we talked a bit about Declan Rice and how he fits into things if he were to join Manchester City, and if that can give us kind of an indication about where his future could lie at Arsenal. So if you haven't yet gone and given that a watch, it is the latest live upload on the channel. And yes, Emrad is right to point out that Clive basically joined us throughout the entirety of that show to provide his insights from the chat box. So it basically became the Canton, Symeou and Palmer show. But it was still good, all the same. Certainly worth your listening pleasure if you would give it a chance. But we should go into today's stories, I think, and start with the first of 3 transfer lines to discuss, which is Mohamed Elneny, first of all. At the moment, he is, of course, away with Egypt at the Africa Cup of Nations, but the Arsenal midfielder is being linked heavily with a move to Turkey. There's suggestions that a move could indeed materialise during this window. He has just 6 months, of course, left on his current contract with the club. I don't know how there would be anything in the way of a transfer fee, if anything, for Mohamed Elneny. Very, very difficult to kind of see that happening because it is what I expect anyway to just be probably a mutual termination and then he'll sign. But it'd be great if indeed we could see a fee achieved for Elneny, but I'm not expectant of that, to be fair. And the same goes for Cedric as well, the Portuguese international, of course, who continues to be on the I suppose fringes is the best way to describe it, the fringes of the squads. And I think that with Cedric being where he is in the group, a move makes the most sense for him, and that has been the case for quite some time. Of course, he spent time on loan with Fulham recently, but still didn't materialise into a permanent move away. He has been with the team in Dubai, as you can see from the image on your screen. However, it seems that Turkish and Spanish clubs are looking at him. There's been notifications that Besiktas might be a real option for Cedric, and Fabrizio Romano saying yesterday that he expects that Cedric will leave during this transfer window. So it's just a case now of waiting and seeing, I guess, where he ends up. On Cedric and on Elneny, though, if they are both to leave, the likelihood is that this will not have a major impact on what type of transfer business we can do. The reality is that both of them will leave for a very small, if any, type of transfer fee, which of course does not free up any kind of funds for us in profit and sustainability regulations. It would, of course, free up wages. Cedric is on about 65 to 75,000 pounds per week, according to Spot Rack. Elneny, I think, is on a wage similar, I think, 50 to 60, I think, according to Spot Rack as well. So it would free up over 100,000 pounds per week worth of wages with both of them gone. But it's not really wages that affect your ability to spend during the window with those regulations. It is more the amount of money you bring in for those players in regards to a transfer fee. So don't expect things to change too much if indeed these two do move on. But the headline story of the day, according to Alex Crook, is that Arsenal are one of the clubs that are looking at Everton defender Jarrad Branthwaite. The Everton player has, of course, been a key part of Sean Dyche's squad, but with the situation that's continued to kind of develop, I suppose, with the Evertonians, it seems that if they can get a good fee for any of their players, they'll take it right now. And also, it might be at a deflated price because of their situation. He is an England youth international, yet not yet made his senior debut for England's squad, but he is 21 years of age still. He can play in either of the centre-half positions and has done throughout the course of the season for Everton, solely at centre-back, although he did have one game playing at left-back, which is in the EFL Cup in their game against Fulham. So perhaps that is what is going to be of interest to Arsenal. He's left-footed as well, and we know that Arteta does like a left-footed centre-half, but you would have to think, what does this mean for Jakub Kiwior if, say, Arsenal were to bring in Jarrad Branthwaite? But I think he's a very good player. I think he's got a lot of potential in this league. He really has moved seamlessly into the senior setup at Everton. And he's went on loan to PSV, so he's had time away from the club as well. That was back in 2022. But he seems to be of a good standing. 25 million euros is the transfer market value. I think Arsenal would be probably expected to pay around that to get him through the door, but Everton's situation might make this simpler for Arsenal to complete a deal. Now, you have not got long to complete your deal for the last tickets remaining in the Football Prize competition to win a signed Invincibles squad display. There are just 38 tickets, according to the website, left, so do not miss out on your chances. Only 11 hours. It will run out after that, whatever happens, no matter if it sells out or not. So with only 38 tickets left, UK-only competition, of course, you got the chance to win an amazing display to go on your wall with images of the Invincible season with the signatures of 23 members of the squad, including the likes of Henry, Vieira, Bergkamp, Pires, Ljungberg, and, of course, manager Arsene Wenger. There's also some instant win prizes that you could get your hands on just by buying a ticket, so I recommend that you get involved if you haven't done so already. Link down in the description. Right, let's move to part 2, shall we? And we'll tackle as many of your questions as we can in the next part of the show. Okay, let's jump into the chat box and go through your comments after what we've already seen from today's stories. Please do, if you haven't already, drop a like and check out the show we did yesterday with Harry. It really was a good listen, and it's always an absolute pleasure to sit down with Harry and talk about things Arsenal. I feel like, we kind of produce relatively similar content in the form of it being grounded and objective, and it's not hyperbolic and crazy and shouty and screamy, and we try and keep our heads screwed on as much as we can to give you our views on the club. So when we tend to collaborate, it tends to be a really good show. So I would recommend that you give it a listen. And of course, you'll be able to check out, if you bought a ticket, because it's already sold out, Harry, at our live event next month, which is going to be very exciting indeed. Gooner Jake says, Tom, Everton's situation is selling players will not affect the ruling by PAS. They have been found to breach of the rules already. Does this not mean that they will not sell easily? No, because it's a rolling 3-year period, Gooner Jake. So they would still need to continue to sell to work in to try and avoid any future potential breaches because of that rolling 3-year period. So I made the mistake of thinking it was kind of 3 years, then 3 years, then 3 years. That was the error that I made previously. I've come to learn that it's a rolling 3-year period, meaning it's like So if you have 1, 2, 3, it's then 2, 3, 4, and then 4, 5, 6, and then 5, 6, 7. I think I probably missed one out in there as well. You see, I can't do this stuff. So yes, they would still need to sell to help with their situation. Bizarre says, I heard PSG were interested in a swap deal for Cedric. I think it was for someone called Kylian Mbappe coming the other way. Oh, well, that'd be great. Sure, let's do that. Cedric for Mbappe. I'm all up for that. That's fine. I assume they swap wage packets as well. So Mbappe would come in on like 75k a week. Absolutely, I'm up for that. No problem at all. I hope you just send me the link of where you saw that story, because I'd just love to check it and give it a bit of a read. Maggie says, I don't rate Cedric, but with Tommy away, if Ben White was to get injured in training, who starts at right back against Palace? It's a really good question. And I would probably say Saliba, I think, would probably play there. You'd then play Kivior at right centre back. You play Gabriel at left centre back, and then you play Zinchenko probably at left back, who's back in training as far as I'm aware this week. So that's probably what we would do if indeed we had the option to do that. It'll be Saliba, Gabriel, Kivior, and then Zinni playing kind of that hybrid role, if you like, on the left hand side. Carl says, Tom, is the team back in London or still in Dubai? If not, do you think they will have a very short period to adapt back to the cold weather? They return today, is my understanding of the situation. As I reported the other week, they were away from last Tuesday, and they have returned, or will be returning today. So that is what the expectation is. Andy says, Tom, have you got the live show cast yet? Yes, but I'm keeping it a secret, is what I'm doing. You know Harry's on. But I thought it'd be more fun for you guys that are going to be coming along for to find out who's going to be there as a bit of a surprise. So sorry, I'm keeping my lips sealed on this one. We sold out tickets, which was amazing. But yeah, I think it's more fun if I keep the lineup a bit secret for the live event, Andy. So yes, sorry, Marcus. Damn me indeed. So I look forward to it. For those that have, of course, bought tickets, I'll be sending out an email to you guys and girls very, very soon, so keep an eye out for that. Lee says, are we the only club in the Premier League that buy players and end up giving them away? Perhaps they should liaise with Brighton and see how it's done. I can tell you, Lee, how it's done at Brighton. You sign tons and tons and tons of players. You sell some for basically what you bought them for, or less than what you bought them for, because you bought them for very small figures, and you keep the ones that made it that cost you also very little amount of money. The difference between Arsenal and Brighton is we can't do that, because if we did that, we'd be in a right lurch if indeed we tried to do it. So yeah, it's not about taking advice from Brighton. I can send you an article explaining that entire situation if you'd like. I wrote a piece talking about why Arsenal can't do what Brighton do. But if you look at the players that they've sold in the last few years, you've probably never heard of a majority of them, despite the fact that you know of the big ones that have sold, but they've sold lots more that haven't done anything at Brighton. So we can't do that. We can't use the strategy that Brighton use. And to be fair, Brighton's strategy is changing as they've gone higher up the table. They are signing more established players like João Pedro, for instance, for like 30 million quid. Dahoud and Milner came in on free transfers. So yeah, it's more than just signing smartly and then selling, but it can't work the same way, I'm afraid. Marcus says, have you heard any rumors about going for Wolves and Aït-Nouri? I've not heard anything about this. Let me do a quick Google search, because usually what happens is the gossip page on the BBC website gives a so yeah, Arsenal and Liverpool are interested in signing Wolves' Algeria left back Aït-Nouri, and this is according to you know who. So basically, every time I read a story and I see that, I'm just like, it's like you can just link every single player that might potentially move to Arsenal, so that you can basically point to that player and say, look, I said that we were linked to him first before anyone. Yeah, you also said that we were linked to 75,000 players. So this is not exactly a real science. So no, it's not the BBC reporting that. It's yeah, you just need to look into it and do the digging to work out how much. It's kind of just quite startling. It's not to say that Arsenal would never sign Aït-Nouri. It's just a case of a source turning around and saying we're signing, or we're linked to, or we're interested in 50,000 players, to the point where you've covered all bases. Like, you've covered every single base possible. So it wouldn't even matter if you got all the ones wrong, because all you need is one to be right. You get a lucky guess, and it works out. Mark says, in an earlier show there was some discussion of Newcastle possibly offloading players to avoid or mitigate profit and sustainability violations. Assuming so, who could we buy? Would it be financially restricted to swap deals? Of course, we ourselves are under some scrutiny, in the sense of we can't just sign a player for £100 million, which is what it would probably cost to sign, say, Alexander Isak, for example. So yeah, it would take it would take a lot of exploring and a lot of imagination to be able to do a deal in the tens to even £100 million. This window, I just don't see it being feasible at all, unless we get a significant sale out through the door. Mobo says, Tom, if all of our outside backs, in terms of our fullbacks, were available, would you try Zinchenko in midfield next to Rice? I believe that we would be a game changer with inverted left back like Tommy or Timber in the same team. Not really, no. I wouldn't. I would use Timber as the right back, Tomiyasu as the left back, Sleeper and Gabriel in the middle, and I'd play Partey and Rice, and then Odegaard as my midfield three. I think that's the best team that we've got available when everybody is fit. If not Partey, then I think Jorginho needs to come in, because I think we just look better with Jorginho and Rice. However, there was a report from Simon Collins saying that Jorginho didn't apparently train yesterday, so just bear that one in mind as we get closer to that Crystal Palace game. Tizer says, hey Tom, with the profit and sustainability rules meaning clubs are selling academy players for a maximum profit on the balance sheet, do you think this will change when the Prem League rules fall in line with FFP from next season? I don't know, Tizer. I'd hate to give you the wrong answer, so I can't give you the answer to that, because I honestly, I don't know. But with how it works with the kids being sold at the moment, it shows up as pure profit, doesn't it? Because you've not obviously signed them for a transfer fee. So if you are able to sell one of your academy players, it looks really, really good on the books, which is why Chelsea have been able to do so much business, because they've sold so many of their graduates for so many millions, which has given them plenty of freedom to sign players. You look at Mason Mount, for example, as a good opportunity. Ruben Loftus-Cheek as another one. Granddaddy Gooner Paul says, do you think there's a link between Arteta being a bit quieter on the sidelines since being in charge? I feel like we've done nothing since his ban. I think he was booked within like a week of his ban. I think he was booked against Brighton, which came pretty soon after the Aston Villa game, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he was booked almost immediately after his ban. So, but since then, it's gone very quiet. So, yeah, I think that's the way forward. Martin says you should ask Harry about his views on versatility. He has a very interesting take on it. I think his take on versatility is spot on, Martin. Harry's spoken about this at length, and I agree with him. Mikel Arteta has got the intention of having a core group of players that can play across multiple positions, because in reality, I can't lose my voice now. In reality, you can't have 25 senior players. At the top of the table, you can't have 25 senior players. It's not going to happen. You look at Man City squads, you've got a core of about 18, 19, 20, if that, senior players, a core group of players that Pep Guardiola uses. And he's managed to master this squad building rhetoric of having 20-ish players that can play in different positions, so that if you lose a player, they're done, they're gone. And if you look at, this has been an evolution of the sport, really. If you look at the Invincibles team, yes, Thierry Henry could play on the left wing and did at Barcelona, but at Arsenal, he was known as being our centre forward. Henry was a centre forward. Dennis Bergkamp was your second striker, could play up top, but as he got older, he obviously went further backwards and became more of an attacking midfielder, backing up Thierry Henry, of course. And Pires was your left-sided player. Ljungberg was your right-sided player. Lauren was obviously a right back. Ashley Cole, left back. Sol Campbell, Kolo Touré, centre backs. Now it's very different. Now we need to be in a position whereby we sculpt a squad that is full of versatility, so that we can cover multiple positions. Now, the problem is if you go down that pathway, you need to make sure that you've got enough cover and enough versatility to cover multiple positions if one was to get injured. So if Tomiyasu is injured, you lose a player that can cover 3 roles. And back in the day, you didn't really get players who could cover 3 roles. The max was 2. And I think, Franklin, you raise a good point with Parler at centre mid and right mid. So the max you could really get was 2. Whereas Tomiyasu can play 3 positions. Kivior could argue play 3 positions. Partey is shown to be able to play at right back in this weird role at DM at number 8 as well. Trossard, 8, centre forward, left wing. Martinelli, left, right, middle, has also played in all 3 positions since being at Arsenal before. I know he's predominantly on the left-hand side, but he has played in the other roles. And Smith Rowe, 10, left wing. He's even played centre forward and false 9, 8. Whereas now, we have players that are playing 3, even 4 in the case of Timber and Tomiyasu, who can play in those different roles. And so for that reason, why there is sometimes a flaw in this plan is if you lose a key player and you've lost 2 of those key players, now you have nothing in certain positions, and that, or very, very, very thin in certain positions. And that's the problem that we've got right now, is that we don't have Tommy, we don't have Timber, and Zinni's been injured, of course, as well. We've not had Partey, who could also play in right back under Arteta and has done. It's very difficult. Very difficult. PW, when you say Kivior can't really play at left back and Partey can't play at right back, again, I would go back and watch the show I did following the Fulham draw, the statistics that we were showing up with Partey playing that right back. He was averaging higher metrics across nearly all of his characteristics playing in that position. He's having a greater impact on the game. He was performing better than his average from the previous season, of which he was available more than any other season. So we had a really good sample size as well. And left back at Kivior, he can play there because he plays there for his national side, for Poland. He's still learning the role that Arteta wants from that left-hand side because it's different to what he has to do when he plays for Poland. But they can play there. It's just not as good as their natural positions, especially Kivior, of course, who is a left-sided centre-back beyond anything else. But they can. Saying they can't play there is just not true. They can play there. It's just to a limited factor. And Partey, actually, people just didn't like it because they were desperate to see Partey playing with Rice. So was I. I loved seeing it, and I want to see that going forwards. If it is in the future, I think Timber is our long-term option at right back. Lee says, Tom, when in the player zone, do you see real disappointment from the squad after a loss, like you see them hurt? I tell you what, when we lost to Everton last season, Lee, I've never seen the players so dejected. The mix zone in Goodison Park is right next to the dressing room. And you can tell how affected they are. It's really difficult to be able to get an interview with the players after games that they've lost because, they don't want to talk because they're very, very frustrated. And I can understand that and empathize with that. Some players are more open to talking than others after defeats. We spoke to Nelson after Liverpool's defeat. I remember speaking to Ramsdale after we lost at Man City last season. I remember speaking to Xhaka after we lost to Forest away last season. Some players are more comfortable talking after defeats. A lot aren't. So yeah, you absolutely can tell, Lee, they are not in a good mood. Nexus says, Tom, what happens if we don't beat Crystal Palace and the window shuts? The meltdown will be epic. And I get the profit and sustainability rules, and this is on the owners to do better at selling. Is it on the owners to do better at selling? Again, I kind of always ask this question. If you've got the solution to those selling problems, if you've got the solution for us to have not been in the position that we are now, selling-wise, then I'm all ears. But I'm yet to get it. I'm yet to hear it. In regards to if we don't beat Crystal Palace, we'll cross that bridge if and when that bridge arrives. Rob says, why did we extend Elneny's contract when he was injured? If we aren't getting a fee for his sale, was it only because we're a nice club? What are your thoughts on being nice versus not selling players well? Well, I mean, it didn't really matter with Elneny, Rob, because, of course, his contract expired in the summer. We extended it for another year. Sometimes it is good to do the right thing as a club because it shows classiness. And it's not always, yes, we should be ruthless. And trust me, we've shown plenty of ruthlessness. Think about how many people are moaning about Arteta's ruthlessness with the goalkeeping situation as an example. Elneny staying, was injured at the end of that season. The hope was that he would be able to contribute in some games this season. But sadly, he's suffered more injuries again. He's still doing his coaching badges as well. It was just the right thing to do. He's our longest serving player at the club now. I had absolutely no issue with him staying for another year. I think it's really pulling at hairs if there is any annoyance at the Elneny thing as well. Shano says, hi, Tom. I'm okay with us not targeting. I'm okay with us not targeting players this year and going again in the summer. But with Arteta for the final piece of the jigsaw, But I do fear that it gets toxic. How do the club deal with this? They don't. I don't think they do, to be honest. I think the club just kind of get on with it. They're very well aware of the fact that there's a lot of animosity around when things aren't going well. But they just kind of let things keep going. Like, I've never had anyone come to me and say, "Can you talk a bit more positively about Arsenal, please?" No, it's never happened. Because I'd tell them, "No, I'm going to speak my mind and I'm going to speak my opinion. I'm never going to not speak what I think about things." And B, it would come across really poorly from the club side. I know there's every institution, every company, every sports club has a PR department, and it's their job to obviously try and make the image of the club as good as it is. But from the point of view of kind of the way in which media has changed and the rise of fan channels and things like that, you can't control the opinions of fans in that way, and it would come across really bad if the club tried to. So, but as Harry talked a bit about this yesterday, I can't speak for other clubs. I can only speak from my experience of working in and around, but not for Arsenal, and that is that they don't influence your view. They don't have any kind of sway on what you should and shouldn't be doing. And certainly, I've never felt that since being there. The only thing that I think that you could argue is that some people turn to me and say, "Why don't you ask this specific question in a press conference?" And usually those questions are something along the lines of, "Why haven't you signed any players?" Or "Why are you not signing this player?" Or "Are you linked to this player? Ask about this player." You're never going to get an answer to those questions. You've got to ask questions that you think you're going to get answered, you know. So there's an element of respect that needs to be there when you're working in and around the club. But when I'm jumping on here and I'm talking about Arsenal on the channel, it's the unfiltered version of my view on different things. And I always ask for challenge. I always invite people to challenge those views. It's no echo chamber here. We encourage challenge all the time. So yeah, I don't think the club should do anything, to be honest, mate, about it. I don't think they should try and do anything about it. The only thing I think the club should discourage, as they do, is the online abuse. It's the abuse that people spout and spew all the time. And they try to, as best they can, to raise awareness of online abuse and to provide support for people and for players and for friends and families of those players. They try to provide the support that they can because some of the abuse is horrific from fans, in quotation. They're not fans, are they? They couldn't give a monkeys about Arsenal, really. It's more important to worry about themselves. But the club can only do so much. So yeah, sorry about that. Let's go to ridiculous difference of Partey and Zinni to Kivior becoming a left wing back, or not even a left wing back, just a left back. Both Partey and Zinni are centre mid players who are trained to become a left back. Kivior is a centre back trained to become a left back, and this is a really good point. I think it is much harder for a centre back to play fullback than it is for a midfielder to play fullback, especially in this system. Because basically, if you play fullback under Arteta, you're basically an extra midfielder. So you're absolutely spot on, 100% spot on. Lynn says, Tom, if you get time, go listen to Judge's podcast last night. He had a guest who wasn't an Arsenal fan, but he was so balanced, and it was a bit of an eye-opener, and Potsy was on there as well. I will see if I can add it to my watch list for today, Lynn. I assume it's on Judge's channel, yes, our good pal Lee. So I will add it to my watch list for sure. And he was very balanced about Arsenal, so I look forward to balance is good. Balance is good. Mark says, Tom, even when De Bruyne was out, Calvin Phillips could not get into the lineup even as a sub. Will City sell him, and do you rate him? Hard to remember playing because it's been so long that he's been on the bench. I do remember him playing for Leeds, and I remember Arsenal fans being very keen on the idea of us signing him from Leeds. Never happened, and I wouldn't expect it to happen. And I don't think it should happen now. Arsenal, I think, have gone to a different level of player to Calvin Phillips, but I think he'll go to a West Ham type team. I think that would probably be where he ends up, and I think that would be a good move. But you're right. City sign players, it doesn't always work out. They spent a lot of money on Phillips. They are not going to be able to get anywhere close to what they bought him for. Are they going to get battered for how much they've spent on him and how much they're selling for? Probably not. No. because they've done well to sell other players quite well. And that's the difference at the moment, is we need to improve in that area. And says, do you prefer Branthwaite or Onana from Everton if you could only get one? I think Onana, because you're looking to sign, a potential starter. And I think we need the depth in the midfield, the centre mid area. And I think there are other kind of fullbacks, if you like, that I'd rather move for than Branthwaite. So I'd prefer Onana. But I think there are better options to both of those players. So it's worth pointing that out. Martin says, to be honest, Arteta wants a team of midfielders, including the goalkeeper, indeed. And that's just the way that he kind of sees things in his philosophy. Is, yes, you need, as a player, to have... I mean, a midfielder is basically what you would describe as the average footballer. The midfielder is the average position of any footballer. If any footballer should really, in the modern era, be able to play centre mid. You should be able to pass. You should be able to have good vision and thought processing to move the ball into the right areas. You should be able to shoot, because a midfielder does need to do that. You should need to defend. A midfielder is the most all-round position on the field. And so Arteta wants players that can effectively be a midfielder anywhere on the field, because you need to be able to have that technical ability to play in that system. So, yeah, I think that you're right, Martin. But I think there's a reason why that is the case, even though obviously there are more specialisms. But when you really strip it all back to the bare bones, every player kind of does need to be and have the characteristics of a midfielder. Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Abdimalik says, who are your ideal signings in January? It's really hard, because if you're asking me to be realistically, I don't think we're going to be bringing anybody in unless it's a loan, in which case, if it is a loan, I would sign a fullback. I said, if you can sign a permanent player, get a midfielder. If it's a short-term option, go and get a fullback, because that makes the most sense for our loan option. So loan-wise, a loan with an option to buy Kadiolu from Fenerbahce, maybe that would be a way forwards, a way through to do something like that. Otherwise, very, very, very difficult. Very difficult indeed. Bizarre says, what are your thoughts on Barcelona wanting Arteta? I wouldn't be surprised. Xavi under pressure at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they approached Arteta. Arteta has just over a season left on his deal. There's been no suggestions that there are talks for a new contract of Arteta yet. The club are very relaxed about that. Arteta's very relaxed about that, very happy at the club, happy to be at Arsenal. We'll be very happy to continue. I imagine it won't take too long to agree on a brand new deal between the manager and the club, if indeed those talks do start up. But this is the thing. Arteta has put himself into the bracket of clubs where if he was to leave Arsenal, the likes of Barcelona would want him. And that was a difference, I think, between him and Emery. When Emery left Arsenal, the clubs that were interested in him were Villarreal and now Aston Villa. Whereas Arteta's got to the level where he's looking at leaving Arsenal. If indeed he does, he's going to be tried. He will be snapped up by one of the elite clubs. I'm sure of that. Absolutely sure of that. Do I think Jose will go to Newcastle? Asked Lee. I think there's potential for that, but at the moment Eddie Howe remains in place, so that's not going to change until at least he's gone. And as Seymour says, I prefer the latter, but is the English quota always a plus for all clubs in the league? Remember, it's not an English quota; it's a non-homegrown quota. It's always important to get that the right way around. So you're allowed 17 non-homegrown players in your senior 25-man squad. So it means that you would have 8 naturally that are homegrown. So, but it is definitely a plus. The idea of having a homegrown status and the homegrown encouragement is definitely a positive. Let's go to Mark. Says, can you give us an update on the injuries? Anyone like Vieira and Partey becoming available for the Palace tie? I think that Vieira, you're more likely to see. It's difficult with Vieira. The hope is weak, so I'd imagine February. Partey, there is hope that he could be available for the Forest game. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one, but there's hope. But we don't know the fine details of that yet. Anyone else? Zinchenko, I think, did train this week. Jorginho missed training yesterday, so we don't know if that's a problem or not. I guess we will find out. But Zinchenko, I think, has been involved in training in some capacity this week, which I think is positive. Who else is there? Is there anyone else? Jesus is back. Jesus is in full training. He's available. He's playing. So he should be all right for the game against Palace this weekend. But I hope that rounds up all of them. Trying to think of any others that are. Tomiyasu is away, of course, so that's different. He didn't play in Japan's first game because he's still building up his match fitness from that game against Fulham. when he did return. Lee says, Tom, where will Josh be speaking at the AFC AGM? I don't know if we do them anymore. I don't think. Do we do them since they took? I think we do. Okay, so the Arsenal AGM 2023 will take place on the 17th of December. So there was an AGM on the 17th of December for the Disabled Supporters Association, according to the Arsenal Disabled Supporters Association website. I don't see anything else. I think we should still do AGMs. But I've not really seen too much about anything else. Minutes of the 20th annual AGM. That was in July of 2023. So I guess July of 2024 is probably when the next AGM is, if the last one was in July. There was also mentions of one in December, but maybe that was for the Arsenal Disabled Supporters Association instead. So there you go. Maybe I guess it maybe is July. All on Deck says football is all about midfielders. Forget what money has to do with the game in aspects of striker fees. And the thing is, with Arsenal going for any striker, they're going to have characteristics of collaboration as well. Ian says, I thought Ben White was carrying an injury. Maybe it was better to rest him for a match. I mean, he's had a weekend off as well. Ben White would have been going through plenty of assessment over the course of the last week plus. So that's a really good point about Ben White, and hopefully this rest will be of benefit to him. Mr. Feather says, so that makes us the club where managers come to learn and train and then move to a big club. Okay. What? That doesn't make any sense. What, just Arteta? Well, are Arsenal not a big club to you? Okay. They are to me, apparently not to you. Tyler says, VAR audio being shown on Sky for Odegaard's handball. They deem it to have been a handball. I think it was really harsh if it had been given, but they seem to think it was handball. I think he was balancing, personally. I think he was using his arm as you do when you're falling to balance and the ball strikes it. I think it's really unlucky if it was given as handball, and I think the right decision was made on the day. Mark says there were several Brazilians that we were interested in that might come for a lower fee. Any news on them? And what of Marquinhos' loan ending? Nothing on the Brazil front at the moment, Mark. On Marquinhos, he's now away with Brazil's under-23s for the pre-Olympic tournament. That runs all the way through until February unless they get knocked out early. I'd be surprised if Marquinhos leaves this window. I think he's more likely to leave on a permanent in the summer would be my prediction. I think he'll be with the youth team for the rest of the season, to be honest. So there you go. Bizarre says, I heard on another channel that if Arsenal were to sell a homegrown player for 30 million, it means we can spend 80 million, or is that complete BS, which is my opinion. It's not entirely incorrect. So the reason why it's not entirely incorrect is because of amortization. So if we were to sell Eddie Nketiah for £30 million, it means that you've just put a academy graduate sale on the books at 30 million in 2020 for the year of 23-24, right? And so if you do that, then what it means is that you could, in theory, amortize 30 million across 5 years for a £150 million player. So the 30 million that Eddie is sold for in this window could pay off a 30 million of the amortization of a £150 million player. I think. I'm not a financial expert. This is me just vamping a bit. But because of amortization of those deals being spread across 5 years, if you were to sell that for Eddie for 30 million, that would show up on your books now. But if you were to buy a player for 150, it would show up as the 30 million across each of those 5 years that they were at the club. I think that's right. So technically, you're right. But it's far more complicated than I make it out to be. I'm not an expert on this, so please don't take that as gospel. But that's my interpretation of technically how it could work. But obviously, that's just one deal. Arsenal have got loads of deals that they've paid for over the years. There's far, far less deals that they haven't obviously pay across it. Yeah, that's just in the context of one in, one out, which is not how it works really for Arsenal. So I guess in theory that could work, but it would depend upon how much money we're paying off the back of other deals that we've done, because we've outspent our sales for the last goodness knows how many years. I can't remember the last time we made profit in a window, and that's a problem. So that's why we are that's why we're in the situation that we are with profit and sustainability. So we made a loss last year of 170 something million euros according to Transfermarkt. This is just player sales. We made a loss of around the same the season before, 140 million euros around that the season before that, 67 million euros the season before that, 110 million euros the season before that, 71 the season before that. We made profit in 2017, the season of 2017. That doesn't include, that includes January deals as well. So, and we made the loss the season before that, a 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 profit in 2012, 2013, a profit a season before that, a loss a season before. I mean, we made profit. It's just a joke, really. In terms of player sales, we just aren't doing very well in that area at all, and we need to be better. So yeah, there you go. Thank you anyway for tuning in. Really appreciate your time as always. Do drop a like on the video. Don't take any financial advice unless it's with a grain of salt, as always. And I'll be back tomorrow morning for another show. Tomorrow, of course, Thursday, we'll probably be doing a preview ahead of the game against Crystal Palace as well tomorrow afternoon. I don't know if we're going to be doing a phone-in show today or not. I might be doing a phone-in show. I might not. I haven't decided yet. It depends on anything that happens today or plans this afternoon. But we might be doing a phone-in show later on today. I'll let you know if we are on social media. So keep your eyes peeled over there. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. Get through this, and you're nearly at the end of the week. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and as always, up the Arsenal.